So this is a list of the first 17 accredited organizations. They're also listed on our website. And you'll see that there are a few social service organizations, Boys and Girls Clubs of Canada, Daily Bread Food Bank, Frontier College, Lions Foundation of Canada, Dog Guides. But there's also a few United Ways and community foundations. Even though it was only 17 groups, we still felt that we got a fair amount of variety in terms of testing the standards and how the process worked. So I was chatting with Tanya over lunch. I was very interested in her presentation on developmental evaluation because we did an evaluation of the pilot we started it last spring when the pilot began. And it turns out that it was a developmental evaluation. I don't think I really realized that until I saw Tanya's presentation. But we were very lucky that Linda Mollenhauer, who's a very highly skilled volunteer, agreed to conduct the independent evaluation for us. She's been working in the sector for over 30 years doing consulting work. And the evaluation is still underway. We've done it in 3 parts. We started off with an evaluation of the application process, and then an evaluation of the peer review process. And right now, we're just about to begin an evaluation of the accreditation and public launch. So we don't have all of the results, but I have some results that I can share with you. And something that we heard from participants quite often was that the process is very demanding. I mean, if you look at 73 standards, you need to assess and make sure that you've got all these things in place. And if you don't have them, then you need to access resources and prepare policies and things like that. But there is a lot of support that Imagine Canada staff provide applicants who are going through the process. And we are also, I was interested to see that community of practice is mentioned in the Social Prosperity Wood Buffalo report, because that's something that we talked about from the beginning of the pilot, in that one of the goals of the standards program is to develop a community of practice in the sense that, as Nancy was saying earlier, you don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel. A lot of organizations have some of these things in place already. We have samples that we can share with people, but someone else may have a sample that's more appropriate to the context within which you're operating. One of the things that we found very interesting in the pilot is that there were a couple of organizations that connected with each other who had not previously had volunteer involvement policies. And they said, we're working in a similar kind of environment. Why don't we get together and develop our volunteer policies together so there's some consistency and help sort of share the workload a little bit. So that was a really valuable process. One of the other things we heard from the participants is that some organizations found that they were in better shape than they thought they were. You might, some people look at the standards and think, oh wow, I don't know how we're ever going to get all these things in place. And then when they start looking at it, they realize, we have a lot more of these things in place than we thought we did. We may not have all of them written down, but we have them in place. And then other organizations had more challenges than they anticipated. They maybe underestimated how many things they had in place. So the takeaway here is really what I was saying earlier, in that it's really important to do a thorough assessment of where you're at, maybe before you start the process or early on in the process, so you know what it is you need to get into place. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of accreditation. These emerged through the feedback that we got from pilot participants. One of the things that we heard a lot is that it demonstrates to stakeholders that you've met externally established standards and you're operating in a transparent and accountable manner. Now, I was at the awards ceremony last night, and I think a lot of you were also there, and I was really interested to hear the response that Jill Spiritus, is Jill here? No? She was the Executive Leadership Award winner. And she was saying, I think Ian Hill asked her to share one of her leadership secrets with the group, and she said transparency, without even blinking. And I think, 5 years ago, you wouldn't have necessarily heard that kind of an answer. And I just found it really interesting. She was saying it's that transparent leadership really fosters trust, which often leads to engagement, loyalty, and action. They had to turn around their space really quickly, and she thinks that the transparency was sort of the secret to that process. So the other thing we heard, one of the other benefits of accreditation was increasing your credibility in the eyes of funders, public, and other stakeholders. And organizations were saying that they were able to demonstrate that they have good practices and policies in place. And then also, it strengthens staff and board knowledge and morale. Especially for those staff and board that were engaged in the standards process, because they then become change agents for transforming practice within the organization. And again, I was frantically taking notes last night when I heard, I think it was the executive director of the Fort McMurray Food Bank. Is Ariana?
The chair.
Oh, the chair.
Was it Ariana?
Or no, maybe.
Ariana's the executive director. Catherine was the one who spoke.
Oh, okay. The woman who spoke. Catherine. Oh, hi. Yeah, so I was also very interested to hear you say, when you received your Community Impact Award, that board development and staff development are what makes you able to do your best, your organization able to do your best in your work and in your community. And I think that that's the standards helps facilitate that process. So that's one of the things where I thought, that organization might be in pretty good shape already to meet the standards. I'd be very interested to hear if some of you, again, assess your practices against the standards where you're at. And because I think you might be a lot further along than maybe you think you are. And then, so a fourth benefit of accreditation is that it provides a risk management framework. And essentially by increasing your understanding of what processes should be in place. So your understanding, your staff and your board and volunteers' understanding of what should be in place to help mitigate risks. So it's really an opportunity to check your floorboards for soft spots before they become sinkholes. Now the other thing is, or one of the other benefits of accreditation is that it helps foster a culture of openness. And this goes back to the transparency issue that I was talking about a moment ago. So we've got just a few more benefits of accreditation, and then I'm actually going to talk about the accreditation process, so bear with me here. One of the key things that the standards does is it helps board and staff understand and follow their legal and financial requirements. So, for instance, the standards requires that your board is involved in things that they may not previously been involved in. So, review of your insurance coverages, for instance, or the process for ensuring that your T3010 is submitted accurately and on time, which can be a big risk for organizations if it's not submitted within 6 months of the due date. Then you're at risk of losing your charitable registration. And then also, one of the benefits of accreditation is that it requires the development of policies and procedures that promote the sustainability of your organization, which again I think goes back to one of the priorities in the Social Priority Wood Buffalo project. So if you have good practices in place, I'll share an example with you from Imagine Canada's experience of going through the standards program, is that our HR practices hadn't been updated in years. And by going through the standards program, it was identified as a risk to the organization. It could lead to problems with recruitment and retention. It could also influence the sustainability of your organization over time. So, and in the case of transparency and accountability, that if you're not following standards related to those areas, then you could be at risk of effectively fundraising or meeting your fundraising goals. And overall, we feel that the standards program is a way of promoting sustainability for the organization.